Hello, everyone, and welcome to Brady's Corner. I'm Brady. This is my corner. We have a phenomenal guest I can't wait to introduce you to today, James Benham. He is CEO of JBKnowledge, amongst other companies as well. James, welcome, and please do introduce yourself.
Glad to be here. Yeah, greetings from College Station, Texas. James Benham, CEO of JBKnowledge, Terra, and Smart Compliance. It's three insurance technology companies that I co-founded and run. Good to be on your corner and chat about business. Yeah,
absolutely, James. And I was thinking last night when you and I, first personally met, and I think it was 2016 San Antonio at the CFNA conference. And
yeah. Good times. Well, we're both Texas guys, so that's
right. And in fact, I remember we had a conversation. We were drinking a particular beer. The road goes on forever and the party never ends. What beer was that, and who wrote that song?
Well, most importantly, that's a Robert Alkeen song, and it's one that I sing and play guitar to too, by the way, because I enjoy that one. And he's an Aggie. He and Lyle Lovett were roommates back in college at A&M, and so they both wrote a bunch of great songs. That's probably one of the best one in every Aggie's favorite song. And so I don't remember the beer, but it was probably Shiner Bock if it was in San Antonio and we were thinking about Texas. But
it was actually, it might have been a license plate, but it was Robert Earl Keen beer. So, but I don't know if he actually made his own beer or what.
Nice.
It wasn't anything that I remember distinctly the taste of or anything. But James, you've got a lot of exciting things going on in addition to having, how many employees? I was going to say hundreds, but I think you have about 200 employees.
270, yeah.
270. In addition to, having that stewardship and running three different companies and brands, you've written a book recently. First one that I know of, and it's really profound. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it's called Be Your Own VC, and it's all about how to bootstrap a business instead of going out and raising money. It's also how to bootstrap innovation in existing companies and how to encourage companies that have already received an investment to pivot their model to a capital efficient bootstrapping profitability model from a growth at all costs fundraising model. So it kind of targets those three groups of people who want to start a business, or entrepreneurs who are at an existing business, or venture capitalists or private equity folks who are trying to get their investments to be capital efficient. The whole goal was to relay the set of, and I boiled it down to 10, but there's obviously more lessons than that, of basic bootstrapping principles to help people to eat what they kill, so to say, and generate cash that can fund their innovation, whether it's at a big company or a startup. It's what we did at our company. We started this whole thing off of a few $1,000 and turned it into something really cool, and had built a product company and then sold it, and then kept the main service business, started 2 new product companies, and did it all with our own profits from our own services. So it's been a fun ride, and I thought it was a discussion worth having in the broader business community.
And to me, the thing that really hits home about it is, I ask myself when I start reading some of that is, what other way is there? And I think it has to do a lot with probably how you and I were raised. You have to make do with what you got. And that's kind of the model, right? And making a little bit more profit. Talk about a little bit. There's the VC model, the traditional VC model you talked about. What happens in that model when people get a little bit of money? What do they go and do with it?
Well, I think and full disclosure, I'm a limited partner at venture capital and private equity funds, and so I just encourage my investments to be very capital efficient. But the unfortunately prevailing theory is a growth at all costs philosophy that says really ignore profit, ignore cash, burn, and grow at all costs, boost growth rate at all costs. Even if you're building a machine that's not fundamentally sound, like the price is not high enough or the costs aren't low enough and the unit economics don't work, somehow there's a belief that either they'll achieve that at scale or they'll follow greater fool theory and sell to somebody before they have to prove they can actually generate profit and cash. And I hate to say I'm a little pessimistic on this. I think a lot of West Coast venture capital funding is really centered around greater fool theory, that they're just trying to sell and then IPO and then get out before they have to prove it actually makes money. And if you look at a lot of the big IPOs over the last 36 months, you look at the bottom line of a lot of those businesses, and it's pretty bad. And the losses are accelerating, not trimming down. And so I think that's why you're seeing so many layoffs right now, is that people are trying, but it's really, really hard to right that ship when it wasn't built. The ship wasn't built properly in the first place. If the ship's not built to float, there's only so fast you can bail water out of it, and that's the kind of the fundamental for me about bootstrapping and about being your own VC, about being capital efficient, is you're trying to build a business that's actually economically sustainable, rather than one that's going to grow at all costs, but depend on someone's largesse. Really is what so many times it happens, where a big public company will hopefully acquire this company and bury it in their financials before they have to prove it'll ever make any revenue, any profit. It doesn't mean that venture capital doesn't produce profitable companies, because they do, but they so often have issues. And so that's been the main theme of this is, hey, look, a lot of discussion out there about raising money, about raising rounds, and do a pre-seed, seed, A extension, B, C, D rounds, and then IPO or exit. Hey, what about this really boring traditional model that's a lot more painful and takes a lot more time, called bootstrapping? And that's why I thought it's worthy of a book.
I agree 100%. And I've followed a similar philosophy. I've just called it smart growth, really focusing on, for example, the geographies, the client customer type that you actually can deal with, rather than just try to be everywhere all at once. You also mentioned something else is, I don't know if this would be under the greater fool theory that you mentioned, but people behaving in a way that they wouldn't with that money, hiring a bunch of people, spending on things you don't need, that if you didn't have that venture capital money, you wouldn't be doing that. And so I think that's something to keep in mind as well, especially if you don't have the benefit of, like you and I on our EOS plans, of a 1 and 3 and 10-year model and mission of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, even the concept of a 10-year target for a company who's going to try and exit in 4 to 6 years is challenging, right? Because that's not the time frame they're thinking in. And if you talk to your typical bootstrapped entrepreneur, they're thinking 10, 15, 25 years. Like right now, I've got I have my own 25-year goal, and I have my own 15-year goal, my own 5-year goal. So I'm at 5, 15, 25 personally, with the businesses, and that's because you can afford to look long, because there's no fund horizon. There's no window in which the investors need the money back. And so you have the option of thinking really, really long and building something really impressive. And there's been some really, really impressive bootstrap businesses built, but they just don't get nearly as much press. If you look at the amount of press that a non-bootstrap business gets, that a VC funded business gets, there's a lot of announcements around fundraising, and then a lot of talk around the exit. And the bootstrap business, because they don't have to do any of those announcements, there's not a lot of discussion about all the money they're making, all the profit they're generating, and so I think that's really why it's important for us to talk about this thing that's not really taught in business school. I mean, I did an ebook on the 10 things they don't teach you in business school, because they don't really teach you how to run a business. They teach you the mechanics of business, you know, but EOS taught me how to, EOS taught me how to run a business. Business school taught me how to do accounting and finance and marketing and IT, you know, some HR and a little bit of finance, but it didn't teach me the overarching system of running a business. EOS taught me that. My father taught me that. You know, and they teach you a lot about leverage and debt and, you know, raising rounds and doing pitch decks, and they have pitch competitions.
P&Ls.
Yeah. There ain't a bootstrapping competition out there. So it's a that's why I think it's worthy of discussion, but it's also worthy.
The Apprentice would have been the only thing even similar, right? Like bootstrap.
Even remotely similar, because they were required to come in and work and learn the business, and you know, it was and earn their way in. and I mean, what a novel concept. It's real interesting.
Well, hey, let me ask you this. You deal in insurance, you deal in you work a lot in construction. That's a lot of your clients is based around that. Tell me your thoughts on, let's break out your crystal ball, or let's maybe even magic 8-ball. Tell me your thoughts in the market right now, interest rates, where we're headed commercially, residentially. What are your thoughts on that, and where are you seeing? And the reason I ask is I think, you know, insurance is probably got kind of the catbird seat, if you will, of a lot of things going on. And so what are your thoughts on that?
Thoughts on the economy, or on the insurance?
On the economy specifically to construction?
Well, because I built a construction bidding system and spent 12 years in that, and you know, spent 7 years in construction podcasting and speaking and these tech reports. I've been able to witness really the birth of construction tech, and the birth of this huge innovation effort inside the United States and around the world around construction technology. So I remain very optimistic that this very old, very important industry is going to continue to innovate and dramatically improve how it gets things done. If you zoom out to the broader economy right now, I'm very nervous for the construction economy, largely because, you know, construction is generally built with debt, and debt is centered around interest rates. And when interest rates double, so when you go from 3 to 6% to 7 to 8, you know, that can actually double an owner's payments. Even though the interest rate's only moving 3 percentage points, the actual payment itself can double. And so I think we're going to see backlogs trim down as people don't have their financing and rates locked in. I think that it's going to be a more challenging market, as in particular as we witness the real fallout of the office apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And people just not leasing space for offices and trimming down their office footprints. I'm continuing, you know, in my networks and YPO and EO and all the CEO networks I'm in, I'm hearing everybody talking about them trimming their office footprints down. I mean, everybody. I don't know anybody expanding office space right now. Anybody. I mean, the only people I know that are building stuff is universities. You know, universities, higher ed, some, you know, primary and secondary, high schools, primary and secondary education. I think the education industry will continue to be a bright spot in construction, but you know, I think housing is gonna slow down for real, and I'm very nervous about the commercial office.
Somebody was telling me something about even just looking at Katy ISD, how their bonds are 1/8 of all of California high school bonds right now on what's being built. Maybe not just high school, but K through 12 in general, on schools and whatnot being built out there, just as one example of schools and what's being built in that area. What's your thought? Okay, so on residential, James, specifically, we're seeing a lot of build to rent, single family rental, pedal to the metal on that building. What's your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts on how that's affecting our future culture as Americans? Am I allowed to even ask that question?
That's a big one. You know, there's a there's a really challenging thing going on right now in general around the securitization of single family residences. So, I mean, we're going way off into the weeds on this, but
well, I mentioned that just because the building is going just 90 miles an hour on the single family build to rent space.
Yes, and I'm very nervous around the institutionalization, the securitization of single family residences really worries me, because a big part of what I believe, and I spent years as a planning and zoning commissioner and city councilor. So I got to sit on city council meetings and planning and zoning meetings and hear a lot of homeowners, and, healthy neighborhoods tend to center around people having a path to ownership, right? Like people having a path to residential ownership, owning the place they live is a really important part of the American dream, and what really
and their wealth, right? I mean,
yeah, the American dream, their personal wealth, and healthy neighborhoods center around. Now, it doesn't mean renters are bad, not at all, because I was a renter before I was a homeowner. But you should have a path to being able to own your own destiny, right? And build wealth in your house, build wealth in your home, and own the place where you live. Now, we could go on another super tangent that you never actually own the place you live because you pay property tax and the government could take this thing from you. And so you're really just renting the land from the government. You don't own it, but that's neither here nor there. When you look at what's going on, though, it is really concerning, because you're seeing large REITs or large public holding companies going in and buying a lot of single family residents, building single family residences, and then creating a housing shortage, right? They're in my opinion, they're actually manufacturing a housing shortage by soaking up the availability of land, lots, and houses, and they're forcing people into being renters. And I look, I'm a free market capitalist, but capitalism depends on healthy minimal but healthy regulation. And I think it's something that we should all be concerned about, because you can't have the mentality that just because I already got mine, I'm not going to worry about the next person. Well, what about the next person and their ability? I mean, first house I bought. What about our kids? What about our kids' kids? What about our kids' friends? I mean, that's who you have to be worried about. Like, my first house was $120,000. So it's very attainable to get in and get a mortgage.
72,000.
Yeah, it was very attainable to get in and get a mortgage and make payments and then pay it off. I paid it off, and I think it was the second house I paid off. Got rid of the mortgage, and I've been a cash buyer on real estate ever since then. And I did it before I made any real money. I followed Dave Ramsey's debt snowball, and I got out of debt, and I owned. And there's really no greater feeling than paying off your house. I mean, it's amazing. And because you can say, look, we have a lot better control over our destiny. And it worries me that people aren't going to have that ability. And I know it sounds crazy that I'm saying that the housing crisis is a bit manufactured, but when you look at the amount of real estate being purchased and controlled, and the amount of inventory in single family neighborhoods being soaked up by REITs and large investment funds, you've got to be really concerned about it. And you got to say, man, this is who's going to have the ability to step into the housing market.
Yeah, and no, is the counter argument to that is that, well, are they creating more efficiency by soaking up some of these homes as the interest rate rises, and these builders aren't able to offload these new homes they're producing? There may be some of that, I'm guessing, but maybe you're saying is just the mass number of homes being acquired by these Wall Street funds kind of countervails that argument a little bit.
Yeah, and if you look, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Atlantic, they've all done articles on this in the last 24 months. You go to Brookings Institute. Brookings did one, where have all the houses gone? And they said private equity, single family rentals, and America's neighborhoods. And I mean, you can go through article after article after article The article in the New York Times was titled "A $60 billion housing grab by Wall Street," saying that hundreds of thousands of single-family homes are now in the hands of giant companies, squeezing renters for revenue and putting American dream even further out of reach. That's the title of the article, and so I think that's something that we've got to really be wary of, and be concerned about. It's not something we can just ignore and turn our back because we already own a house.
And that I hate to do a shameless plug here, but you recently contributed to a book that I'm about to publish called "The Millionaires You Went to High School With." One of the things in there that surprised me, James, when we did some research, is that there are 23 million millionaires in the United States. I've got to believe that more than half of those are homeowners in California and New York and Massachusetts, right?
It depends on how you define a millionaire. If
net worth of 3 million or more.
There you go. Yeah. Net of debt. Yeah.
And so that's got to be a lot of homeowners in those 3 states, I'm guessing. But that said, that if people aren't acquiring homes and acquiring those wealth, we're going to see the number of millionaires diminish drastically over the next 20 years, right?
I think so, because so much of families of wealth is tied up in their houses.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk a little bit about, James. One of the things that in my book that I'm trying to break is the idea that the millionaires out there are really more like, kind of Scrooge McDuck, right? Or everybody here, I don't know if anybody here is old enough to remember DuckTales, but you got Scrooge McDuck over there, or, we might think about Elon Musk or Warren Buffett. I was thinking, actually, when you mentioned your 25-year plan, I was thinking about a name for you, the Sage of BCS, Bryan College Station. But, we think about these outlandish ideas of folks, but there's a lot of people, James, that run plumbing companies, that run construction companies, that run software companies, demolition, cleanup, that these folks are absolutely millionaires. They're just not out there flaunting it, and they'd be embarrassed to say that they're millionaires.
Yeah, well, some of the dirtiest jobs have some of the dirtiest jobs out there have some of the best pay grades. If you look at, because people are willing to pay a lot of money to other people to do a job that they don't want to do, and so that's what I always loved about Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe, is that so many of the people that he interviewed on that show were very wealthy, but they were doing jobs that nobody wanted to do and getting paid fantastically to do it. Now I'm not in a dirty industry or a difficult, physically difficult industry in software. But there are so many really amazing business people that have struck on their own and done well by doing things that nobody else wanted to do. That being said, there's also a lot of people who've done well by, entering heavily crowded markets that everybody does want to be in. Right. So there's a lot of ways to peel the orange, so to say, on making money. But you're right. I mean, there's so many of them you would never have any idea that they've done well, and they'd rather you not know. They don't want the attention.
So James, what separates these people that went ahead and they started their business, and they were probably solopreneurs to start with, and then eventually bootstrap themselves up, right? For most of them, some of them ended up, if they're builders, funding is absolutely required in most cases. What do you think separates these folks from, from other folks that are in the cubicle, or haven't made that jump yet, or maybe never will? What do you think's different?
No, I think everybody is capable of doing almost anything. I do have the kind of the unlimited constraint thinking in general. I think that certainly it's extremely stressful, extremely time consuming. There's a lot of sacrifice involved in being an entrepreneur. or and climbing the corporate ladder. I mean, there's, if you want to be aggressive in any career, there's just not a lot of ways to be aggressive in a career or a business and not sacrifice something. And so people just make that decision every day, on whether they're going to sacrifice, but often decisions are made for them. I think one of the things that you'll see come out of this period of large layoffs is a whole bunch of companies get created because the decision is being made for a lot of folks whose jobs are being eliminated. That it's the push they needed because they were comfortable, and then when they get laid off, they decide to, instead of going to work, they decide to build a business. So I think everybody's capable. It's just like I don't really believe in I haven't studied the data, but this is just maybe an anecdotal belief or a heart belief that it's not just extroverts that do well at being professional speakers. It's not just extroverts that do well at selling. I know a lot of introverts, and my definition of introvert or extrovert is extroverts get fueled up by social interaction and people, and introverts, their battery gets drained. Mm-hmm. Both of them can be very good at dealing with people, and both of them can be great speakers and great presenters and great salespeople. But extroverts get juiced up. I'm an extrovert. I get juiced up by that interaction. Introverts get tapped, right? Their battery gets reduced. And so both can be very successful. It just depends on whether or not you are willing to make the sacrifices that it necessitates. And also depends on if you found a good work home or not. I mean, I've got some really, really amazing teammates, and something we've worked really, really hard to do, and I know you've done the same thing at your business, is to build a place that people want to come work at, to build a business that they enjoy and doesn't take them down. And I think that's a really, really important part of this. And so I don't think there's one archetype or one personality type, or, I think I've seen people who have super high IQs do not very well in business. I have seen people who, are not, the top of the IQ charts, just plow, the ultra intelligent into the ground on business because they just work so much harder, and they've got so much common sense and not as much book sense. And so, that's why I don't think there's any one path or any one person. It certainly is a combination of a lot of hard work, determination, willingness to endure pain for a long period of time, and then some luck. Do you meet the right people at the right time? And I say in the book, that rule number 4 is that the first rule of business is to survive. If you can survive, then you can hang around long enough to be lucky. So you could argue that the longer you're around, the luckier you get, because you can meet more people.
Yeah, I forget who mentioned that recently. It seems like the harder I work, the luckier I get. Yeah. Who was that? Maybe it was.
It's an often referenced quote. I don't remember who originally said it, but it's quoted so much because it's true, right? I would say maybe we need to revise the quote and say the harder and longer I work, the luckier. Because sometimes it's just you can work the same hard day, but just for a longer period of time, and eventually you get lucky. Eventually you hit something that works.
So I know we don't have that much longer, but I do want to. There's, for lack of a better word, James, I think there's so many bullshit artists out there that are just trying to sell a gimmick. For example, take ice showers, wake up at 5 a.m., do this, ice bath, all of these things. Now let's talk about that a little bit. I think most successful people that I know, they have a routine, but there's not any, as you mentioned, I don't think there's a particular routine. I know folks that are worth over $100 million, and 7 a.m. is their time to wake up, and they're not taking ice baths and whatnot. So yeah. talk. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I think that people just get bored with life and are looking for new things to try. And certainly as we get older, and I've noticed I'm now in the age bracket in my 40s, where a lot of my friends are getting much more concerned about longevity, how to be healthier longer, because you're starting to get concerned because things start to break down. You start to need reading glasses like I did last year, or you start to need, you start to have ankle injuries, knee injuries. And so your weight management becomes a lot more challenging. Energy management, you get a little fluffier and you get a little more tired and you get a little crankier, and then your knees and ankles and hips and elbows and your eyes. I mean, things start to happen, about 40 years in. And so you start to hear this and see it. And we're in the demographic that's getting targeted in all these ads. And it was funny because I saw the ice bathing and the ice shock thing this morning on an ad that was remarketed to me. And look, I don't think any of that stuff is correlated or not to business success. But I do think that personal health is.
Yeah.
I think that if you're not healthy, you don't feel well, it's going to be a lot harder for you to perform and to be creative. And if you're tired all the time, it's really a challenge. And so I think that we do have to focus on personal health and mental and physical well-being. And I'll be totally honest. This is something that I consistently have to really work at. It's hard. It's hard staying mentally healthy. It's hard staying physically healthy. And it does require that you change your habits up sometimes if something's not working. And so I think that's why you see a lot of people try that. I mean, I did CrossFit for 7 years, tore 2 ankles and got really strong and then got really injured and had to try something else. And, now I do F3, which is a bunch of guys my age getting together in a park, working out for free with each other 3 days a week, volunteer.
Like 5 a.m., right?
Yeah. 5 a.m. We get up at 5 a.m. and go work out together in a public park. No one pays anybody any money. And I'm in just as good shape as when I paid people a ton of money to train me because I have group accountability. And so that's why I'm saying, like, I'm trying to focus on things that I can do for a lifetime right now, rather than things that are going to be, I'm going to go jump in a cold lake every morning. And
yeah,
then I'm going to do some deep, heavy breathing. I've seen that where you do you do the heavy breathing and stuff. I'm like, man, I think I'd just pass out if I did that.
I just pass out watching that.
Yeah, exactly. I just pass out watching that. Or, I'm probably not going to do that. This morning I got up and went for a 2-mile run with my dogs, and I walked part of it and then ran most of it. I feel good, and I'm hungry, ready for a good meal. Gonna have some barbecue today for lunch. So I mean, I think it's hard. It's hard being an absolutist in anything.
James, let's talk about a couple things before we go. 2 quick things, 2 important things. One of the most important. Let's talk about and this is something I discovered about you, your family time and camping with your kids, and the time you spend there. And like I was shy. I didn't know you went camping that much. And like the number of times you went camping. You have it down to a science.
Yeah, well, I tried to add it up. I think it's around 45 or 48 times we've been camping. It's because it's most people, when you say, do you go camping? They say yes. And you say, how often? You say once a year. I'm like, well, that's not really going camping that much. I mean, you're not, and then you ask, well, how'd you go camping? Well, I went to a cabin or a big RV or something. Like, okay, well, I mean, I got fortunate enough that another dad in town introduced me to YMCA Indian Princesses, which became called YMCA Y Guides and Princesses, which is all about taking dads and their kids out in the woods and camping once a month, 8 times a year. And so I did it for, it's about 6 years, and I got to lead my group for about 3 years, and just took a lot of kids in the woods camping. I took my 2 daughters. My youngest really took to it. We had a great time. Spent a lot of time in the woods. Now they prefer to go to Universal Studios. They're teenagers now, so they have different tastes now. They want to go to Broadway musicals and Universal Studios and other things. But I spent way too much time on the road for the first years of their life, way too much. And so I've spent the last 6 years trying to make up for it, and spend a lot more time traveling with them, spending time with them, doing trips with them, and doing fun activities around town. And it's definitely been worth it. And I don't regret a single minute, even though a lot of bug bites, a lot of mosquito bites, a lot of ants, a lot of hot nights or cold nights, or, being in the tent shivering, or getting a heater, or the heater goes out, or it's a lot of work, cooking for a lot of kids. That's mainly what you do, is you cook 3 times a day for all these kids. It's a lot of work, but I think it was worth it. My kids will say it was worth it. And, we built a lot of great memories. It's something that no one can ever take from you, is your memories.
That's the real wealth, the relationships and the memories.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you can't take the experiences away from me. I've had some awesome experiences, and those stay here, and they stay there with my kids too.
And James, thank you so much for that. And last but not least, one of your other passions, you're a pilot.
Yeah.
And you're very passionate about that. And you've done everything. You've done, you fly for business, you fly for fun, you fly for charity. I know you've done missions for dogs, even, and pets. Talk a little bit about that before we go.
Yeah. My mom's a pilot, not active anymore. My dad's is a pilot, but not active anymore. They're in their 80s now. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a different story, but my dad's a 6,000-hour air transport pilot. Mom's a 600-hour multi-engine pilot. My mom's dad was a Navy pilot. He was a submarine hunter and an observation airplane in World War II. And so it kind of runs in the blood. And I started flying when I was 19, but didn't finish my license. And started the business, didn't have any time to do it. And 5 years ago, I got my business SmartBid under letter of intent to sell it. And the day I did that on December 7th of 2017, I went down to the, I told my business partner, I said, you need to finish due diligence. I'm going to the airport. And I went and finished my pilot's license in about 3.5, 4 months. And I've now gotten 7 of those. So I have a, single engine, multi-engine private, then single engine, multi-engine commercial, then single engine seaplane commercial, then an instrument rating, then a CJ type rating. And so I've really gotten to fly a lot of different things, and I've got just under 1,500 hours now. And in those 5 years, it is a phenomenal hobby. It's a great passion. It's a great skill to have. It teaches you about navigation and weather and about mechanics and about physics and math. I mean, it's like a master's degree having to go through that much. And I have had so many moments of just sheer delight flying. It's really nothing that no hobby can really come close to that. If you just take family out of it and just look at personal hobbies, nothing can really come close to the delight that generates, at least for me. It's also challenged me. The 7 tests and check rides I had to take were extremely stressful, high pressure. The consequences are serious if you screw up. And you finish after 2 or 3 hours of that, and your shirt is soaked, you're exhausted, and it's a great sense of accomplishment. And so that's why I really enjoy flying. And it allows you to do things that you can't do otherwise. You can't. Yesterday I did a day trip out to Mississippi and back, and it was an hour each way. And, I was home for dinner. I left after breakfast, was home for dinner. And it's just not possible to do that without flying yourself. And so it's fun. And now I'm a regent at Texas Southern University, which is a governor's appointment here in Texas. And it turned out I didn't know this, but when they appointed me, I found out they had an aviation school at Texas Southern that was really small and struggling and trying to grow. And so I've gotten to fuse my passions for politics and service with flying. And we took that little aviation school from 18 kids to 56 now.
Wow.
And from 2 airplanes to 7. And we just had our first 2 pilots get their commercial ratings and get hired by Southwest Airlines. And they were both women. And I was just so excited because it's so rare. Women in flying is still a very rare thing. And minorities in flying is a rare thing. And we had minority females that are going to be, pilots at Southwest Airlines, and came out of our school, and it resulted of the efforts that we did.
That's awesome.
And so that's what flying is so cool, because there's a lot of rewards and a lot of stresses and a lot of tests. And it's neat being involved in the aviation community in the small way that I am.
And I watched a video you did recently about the applications of that to not only life, but to business as well. And that could be the content for an entirely different podcast, certain, maybe even a book, maybe James Benham's next book. But no, this is great. I really appreciate it, James. I know our audience is going to love this. Well, James and everyone, I really appreciate your time today. I think that is about all the time we have. James, how can everybody get a hold of you or check out your book? How can we find your?
It's on Amazon, and the audio book will be here in a few months, but the paperback and hardcover and Kindle edition are all on Amazon. You can just go to jamesbenham.com. You can check out the company at jbknowledge.com, and you can check out the book, Be Your Own VC. That's on Amazon. You can check it out there. You can also email me, james@jbknowledge.com, and I'll be happy to chat with you. And thanks for having me on, Brady. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. Make sure to like and subscribe and share. And until next time, thanks for joining us here at Brady's Corner.